Hey, so, I mean, we've been going around this all, and by the way, notice how crisp the House part of the program is moving along? You're welcome, we get it. But now it's time to actually do something, let me walk that back. Now it's time to hear from somebody that's kind of a hard science thing. And I know you said, hey, there's 3 people up here that were born in Nevada. Just wanted to see if anybody was awake. Who's swearing down there? You're awake, that's nice. So anyhow, I said there were 3 people, and I was counting your next speaker as one of those people, and they're going, hey, not so good in geometry, huh? Or geography, huh? Amodei, South Lake Tahoe's in California. It's like, all you people in South Lake Tahoe know you want to be in Nevada. And so we're going to extend a little olive branch for purposes of this meeting today. But he got out of California as soon as he could and went to the University of Nevada in Reno. And there you go. So deal with those facts, spin them however you want. But here's the important part, I think. Whether we're talking about anything, about the environment, climate, Lake Tahoe, the other side of the hill, where you're talking about where it's going on now, where it happened in the wine country, where it happened into the East Oakland Hills, where it happened in San Diego way back, all this stuff where it's happened to the tune of almost 500,000 acres recently in the Great Basin. It's like, guess what? There's one thing in common with all of that, and that's, what's the story on fire? And so how do you get effective before the fire starts? How do you become more effective? Because they do a pretty good job on suppression, ladies and gentlemen. Not that you ever say mission accomplished, we're good enough. And just as importantly, since once those acres turn black, you've got the whole, how do we restore it and bring it back? Those are all huge issues where you go, well, that's fire. It's like, no, that's kind of almost everything. That's what's the public safety of your community, of your landscape, of your everything. What's going on after that happens in terms of if something turns black next to your town, in this basin with the runoff, or out there where it's sage hen country. That's right, they're all females in Nevada. We don't have grouse in Nevada, and it's not Nevada. Sorry to the rest of you folks. They're sage hen, and it's Nevada. What happens when it goes in the Great Basin for that? And so we've always dealt with that, but it's kind of been, yeah, we got to do it because when the fire starts, we got to do something about it. Guess what? Those days are over. It's how do you get effective, because if you're a climate change person, if you're I want to see this basin continue to put less runoff into that resource over there, if you're endangered species and I want that habitat to be maintained or brought back, guess what? In this part of the world, you got to get real scientific and effective before the fire, during the fire, and especially after the fire, because we got a lot of after the fire. And so, it gives me great honor to bring up somebody who's talking about, hey, what are we doing in terms, in a way it's interesting, the old lookout towers. It's like, oh, somebody's up there looking around seeing if there's any smoke, and it's like, well, the technology's progressed a little bit beyond that. We can have something looking instead of somebody. But I want to bring up Dr. Kent now to give us a good dose of what he's doing and how that fits into the puzzle, because guess what? It starts and ends with, what's your fire program? Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Kent.
Oh boy. Well, as a local kid, sitting up on stage, watch out what you ask for, right? You might be up here someday. And I feel like one of those lake trouts on water, if you know what I mean. I'm getting a little old here, so I better put these on. Obviously, today's smoky air reminds us how close large wildfires are to our area. And really, since the last summit, think about it, everybody, both California and Nevada have experienced their largest historical wildfires. And when I wrote this down, I had the Thomas Fire in there. And if we count the river and ranch fires together as a Mendocino complex, it may have just bumped out the Thomas Fire. And it's early August. That's kind of depressing. Right, and but the good news is that the AlertTahoe system all started here in Tahoe, not somewhere else, right here in the lake. And it's now growing throughout the West, and yes, I'll use the expression, it's wildfire. And we're now 3 universities working together, the University of Nevada, Reno, UC San Diego, and the Ducks up in Oregon. They always always have the great uniforms when you watch football. They change at halftime. I don't think our cameras will change their feathers though. But here's an important point. Our cameras, they don't come equipped with a hose. We'd like that, but they don't. They don't even carry a single water bucket to douse a fire. They can't bulldoze a line to essentially stop a fire. So what is this all about? Instead, our cameras help firefighters basically get on top of the fires early. So you just whip that camera over Diamond Peak, just a few miles up here to the north, and that person in Camino, for example, can know immediately what's going on. There's no guesswork, as we saw last week in St. Helena when I was down there in the North Bay. And so that's really important to be able to get on these things right away. And so that's what AlertTahoe is all about. And it also allows folks to scale up or scale down. You don't want folks having to like throw a bunch of stuff on one side of the basin or in Markleyville when it's one of those unable to locate fires in the end, right? So we want to be able to get it right as soon as possible, and that's what AlertTahoe and ALERTWildfire is all about. But it's also about more than that. It's about participation in the communities. And the Tahoe Prosperity Center and their CEO, Heidi Hildrum, who should stand up right now, Heidi, believed in this project early on. And because of that, we're almost done, but not quite, with the fire cameras in the basin, because of her work and her board, and the people who also donated money. We want to thank those people too. So we're doing this public-private partnership, right? And I have some more good news here. So today I can announce that the Parasol Tahoe Community Foundation completed funding for the last 2 cameras in the basin. And it's and has set up a $55,000 matching endowment for continued maintenance. So if you got a couple Benjamins in your pocket, you might want to send them over here. And of course, this is in addition to the $226,000 that Senator Hillary talked about. And we thank him greatly, because it ain't easy to get anything passed these days, and he had to work for that one, right, Senator? So again, let's thank Senator Heller for getting that money into the basin. But it's not just about spending money. We can save money too. For example, the ALERTWildfire system can save about 80 grand, not $80, if you have to descale a response on a red alert day, bad fire day. That's a lot of money. So if you can see the fire and you know you can just send a truck or two, you don't have to get the stuff in the air, and that's great. And that's kind of the knowable savings. Here's a really good example of an unknowable one, but we kind of know where it went. The Lilac Fire in San Diego is a great example. Worst fire conditions ever. So we went from red flag days to purple flag days, right? And there was a roadside car fire. And within 35 seconds of that being reported on 911, the camera was on the Lilac Fire. It didn't look good. But 14 more cameras from the ALERTSDG&E network were watching the rest of the county. No other fires. And this is where the fire chief made a brave decision. He gambled, but informed. He threw every truck and asset into the gap of the San Luis Rey River. And they stopped it at 4,100 acres. And many people thought beforehand and during the early phases, it might go to 40 or 50,000 acres. So that's how you potentially save $1 billion in one crack. And that's important because it didn't become another Cedar fire. And my wife, Stephanie Kent, down in the front row, and I experienced in 2003 just that. We got burned over by the Cedar fire in our house. We lived the dream, which is a nightmare. And that's probably why I'm up here today. It just takes one of those events to make you reorient your life. And the other thing just to realize is that, we grew up, Stephanie and I grew up Vikings in South Shore, Nevada, right? And we never once, at least I didn't, I don't think we ever once thought about, oh my God, like tomorrow we could lose everything. We'd burn down. That was back in the 70s. That was about a decade after we pushed burning embers off of Glacier Point every year in Yosemite Valley. But it's not just about the lilac fire. Just in our own backyard, the night of the Emerald Fire that Senator Feinstein talked about, an arsonist who was basically on his rage, on his 30th fire that year, lit one, luckily, right in front of the Heavenly Valley Fire Camp. So he used the Emerald Fire as a deception. And our brave firefighters here, again, hands to them, got on that fire early and knocked it down. And that was a high wind event fire. And that camera allowed the firefighters, people like Camino Dispatch. If you don't know about Camino, you should, because that's where they dispatch all the fires out of. That was another disaster averted. And of all those 30 arson fires, some of them discovered on AlertTahoe, some of them moved because the 911 call was in the right place. Not a single one escaped. They were all kept small. But again, it's not just about building the thing in Tahoe. It's because of the success of AlertTahoe, we're helping other communities build their own alert wildfire camera systems. This afternoon, I can report that Dr. Neil Driscoll from UC San Diego is presenting to the Board of Supervisors for final approval for their own Alert North Bay. And to make sure that we don't ever have a situation again where the real-time intelligence is poor in that region. So that's really great news. And we already got one camera in Sonoma County, and we just installed a temporary camera to watch the branch fire from Lake County. And they're having a tough time, and again, thanks to CAL FIRE and Chief Pemlot for his people acting quickly to allow that camera to go up. And, but we're really battling in normal, right? It's a scary thing. I don't know if it's normal at all, really. I don't want that as a normal. I want to try to roll it back. But what's really cool is that we're getting coordination, collaboration of agencies, public and private partnerships, and just public awareness. A couple of fires were discovered by the public last year on AlertTahoe. So that's great that that's coming all together. And again, we want to thank the Tahoe Prosperity Center for believing in this project initially. And not only funding cameras, they somehow managed to get folks to give money, and they carry 4,000 pounds of equipment up the hillside. So was that cool or what? My techs and engineers love that part, trust me. But I would also like to thank some local folks that you may or may not know. Kit Bailey and Matt Keller from the Forest Service. They're now both retired, but they were in early on. Paul Peterson, he's the BLM's Nevada State Fire Management Officer. They're doing great things to the east to try to protect sage-grouse habitat in places like Elko, for example. And that's really important. I need to thank my dean, Jeff Thompson from University of Nevada, Reno, College of Science, for really encouraging us and allowing us to kind of do our multi-hazard dream, because we're still doing earthquake, folks. But fires seem to be more prescient. I thank the Associate Director of the lab, Ken Smith, who's here today, and all the other seismology geeks in our lab. Because I hate to tell you people, you need geeks in your life, right? So let's get into the geeks, right? I especially want to thank my wife here, Stephanie Kent, for her encouragement, because not all days are fun days, right? And really helping early fundraising when we didn't know what we were doing, and Heidi stepped in. Thank you, Heidi, again. And also just organizing as we're expanding into 5 states right now. Again, I want to thank Senator Heller for securing these funds that are critical to take this initial test bed that we're now making better everywhere else and do a refresh and add a couple cameras to make sure we get total coverage as the senator promised last year's summit. So that's great. Thank you again. I'll leave you with this. You can see these your fires on your phones right now. Go to www.alertwildfire.org. Press the area that you're interested in. You go see the Orange County fire right now, the Holy fire, which I think you need some holy water to knock that thing down. But it's there. If you see it, tweet it, call 911, help us out. And while we all know that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but what happens in Lake Tahoe changes the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ken. We're coming to the end of the program.